let's talk about my NDE in 1972. So in 1972, I was going to summer school at the UCSD campus in La Jolla, California. University of California, San Diego is in La Jolla, California. All right, that section of San Diego. I had never been to the West Coast before. I met this girl at the, I think I would consider myself a young man or a boy at the time. I was only 20 years old. But those of you who are 20 years old, I don't mean to disrespect you by calling you boys and girls, but I was a lot younger than I am now. I met this young woman at the registration desk, and we chatted. We were standing in line, and she said, "Oh, you're from Mass." She goes to school at Mount Holyoke in Massachusetts. Oh no, as Jackie said, I went to Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, and we were doing an intensive year of Chinese study in 8 weeks, a summer program at UCSD. So 1 year's worth of Chinese language in 8 weeks, very intense. And so, well, we don't have class till tomorrow. Want to go to the beach? She said, sure. So we went down to the beach. Neither of us had ever been to the West Coast. Those of you who've not been to the West Coast, and those of you who live on the West Coast or visited the West Coast, you know there are rip currents in the ocean from, Mexico to Alaska. There are rip currents. I grew up in Massachusetts, went to Cape Cod. There are no rip currents. There's undertows and things like that, but there are no rip currents in Massachusetts that I'm aware of. Or what's a rip current? It's a river in the ocean that comes right in along the shore and then goes back out into the ocean again. And if you're standing a couple hundred feet up from the surface on a cliff, like there are 300-foot high cliffs at this beach, Torrey Pines Beach, and we were at the Blacks Beach end of Torrey Pines Beach, if you know where that is, Torrey Pines State Park in La Jolla, because the UCSD campus pretty much goes right down to the beach almost. Excuse me. And so rip current pulls me out 1.7 miles in about I don't know, I was panicking, so I didn't time it, but so forgive me if my exactness is off, but a minute or two, pretty fast, really fast. Okay. And I know I was how do you know what 1.7? Because I talked to my friend who's on my nonprofit board. Actually, he's a captain of these ships for his whole life. He just recently retired, 600, 800-foot ships in the ocean. He was the captain of the ship. I said, Cayman, so these 300-foot high cliffs were about 3 or 4 inches tall. How far out was I? That's what he told me. Almost 2 miles out. And I freaked out. I'm 20 years old. I was 21 years old at the time. I'd been meditating for 2 years at the time. So what happened in my NDE, I'm out there, way out there. And my friend, the young woman, which she did not get pulled out in the rip. And she was standing on the shore, evidently. I couldn't see her at that point. I was so far out, but she waited for me to swim in. But I started swimming in against the current. You don't do this. I may save some of your lives. You swim at an angle to the beach to try to get out of the current. But I panicked, and I knew that intellectually. So here's a great example of knowing something intellectually, but experientially, do you put it to practice? I panicked. And so I'm swimming, I'm exhausted, I'm getting nowhere. I'm probably getting even pulled out farther. And I start going down, just like in the movies. Obviously, I didn't drown. It was a near drowning. But I start going down, and I see, just like in the movies, you see the water surface, in those movies, they have the camera here, you see the water getting farther, the surface of the water getting farther away from you. And I just, I left my body. But I knew, because I had been meditating for 2 years at the time, every day, twice a day. I've been meditating every day, twice a day for 2 years. What's that? Like 1,400 meditations? Am I doing the math right? That's like 1,400 meditations. Yeah. I've done at that point, and I spent a full month with Maharishi every day, several times a day, at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst in the summer of 1971, the year before my near-death drowning. I knew, my point is, I knew I was steeped in, I had hundreds of experiences of my mind and body being separate from each other through the meditation. So back to my experience, I'm going down, my mind leaves my body, and I recognized it. You know, those of you who have had NDEs or have heard or seen YouTube videos of other people talking about their NDEs, when they have the NDE, typically what's the first emotion they have? Surprise, right? Probably even shock. If they're being candid with you, they're probably more shocked, honestly, than even just, oh, it was a little surprise. They're probably shocked, like, what? Where am I? I'm out of my body, and my body is down there on the floor or in the car wreck or on the surgical table, and I'm whatever their NDE experience is, the context. They're way out of their body, and they're still alive, and it's a shocking experience for most people if they're really going to be candid with you, all right? Or they're out in space or whatever. People have different subjective experiences of an NDE, as we said. But for me, it was familiar. You see, I wasn't shocked. I was like, oh, and in a split second, I decided, no, I gotta get back in my body. So I willed myself right back into my body. And this all happened in a split second. So I'm breaking it down for you. Otherwise, how could we talk about it, right? So in a split second, my mind left my body. I realized what? I'm kind of observing myself, so to speak, like is very common in NDEs. And but I got it back in, calm down, relax, don't rush, something like that. I didn't have thoughts go through my mind. It was just all a feeling, just don't rush. And I struggled the 4 feet to the surface of the ocean again. Remember, I'm almost 2 miles out. I struggled to the surface. So the ocean is like, I don't know, 2 miles off of you don't know California. The ocean floor drops off fast in California. It's not like Massachusetts where you can walk out for a mile or two. It's like it drops off hundreds of feet really fast off of California, the coast. And so I struggled 2 or 3, the 3-4 feet up, and I got up to the surface. I flipped over my back, and I just caught my breath and did not try to swim in until, I calmed down a little bit. But that was that. If I had had a regular NDE experience, like what you hear most people talk about, well, I'm on the other side and I met Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or what people think is God or some angel, or my dead grandmother came to me and she told me everything's okay. Whatever the NDE experience is that many people will describe in that way, not always that way, but very similarly, my body would have kept going down. By the time, even 5 seconds, if I have a 5 or 10 second NDE experience like that, how far down do you think my body would be? 20, 30 feet? 40 feet? God forbid, some people's NDEs experiences last for minutes. Minutes, my body, I'm down 100 feet in minutes, right? No way I would have been able to struggle to get to the surface once I willed myself back into the body. So meditation saved my life. That's what saved my life. The experience of having 1,400 meditations, probably more than 1,400, because we meditated multiple times a day. That 1 month I was with Maharishi, and the other 500 people or 1,000 people, I'm not sure, crammed into the auditorium at University of Massachusetts Amherst for that summer month in the summer of 1971.